I'm sure all of you have heard the phrase the American dream. I know all my fellow Americans have definitely heard it probably every day since, I don't know, birth. You work hard, play by the rules, do what you're supposed to do, and you'll make it big. Everything will be fine. Everything will be just gorgeous and glowing and golden. That's not actually true. So, as an American living in the UK, I've realized just how deeply, though, that myth shapes people's lives back home and how it shaped my life when I lived there and how I didn't even realize it was happening. A big proponent of the American dream is the promise of upward mobility. That if you work hard, you're automatically going to climb the ladder. You're automatically going to advance and be in a better position than you were when you started. It's sold to us as a guarantee that no matter where you start, you're always going to end up further along. But in reality, social mobility in the United States is really, really difficult and ends up happening a lot less often in the US as compared to other places like Europe. Where you're born, your zip code determines a lot of opportunity that you have in America. What schools you're allowed to go to, what kind of jobs are available in your area, the substance of those jobs, how much they pay, how much you're able to build worth by buying a home or investing in that community, what kind of resources are available to you in that educational system. Your family's income determines where you live and thus determines what kind of opportunities you're actually given in America. All of that ends up molding you and shaping you and ultimately predicting where you're going to end up in the end. Education is sold to us as a golden ticket. The golden ticket that you don't get out of a chocolate bar, the golden ticket that you pay for the rest of your life. Once you have a job and you're not in school anymore, you are obligated to start paying it or you're going to be sent to collection. So you're basically starting as an adult with thousands, tens of thousands, some hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt before you even start working. But if you believe in the American dream, you're told, go to university, go to college, get a degree, get a second degree, get a master's degree, some get a doctorate, go and be a professional, invest in yourself. And if you do that, success will automatically follow you. But there are doctors that I know that can't find a job in America. There are people who have master's degrees in business, in finance, that are working a customer service job entry level for like $20,000 a year in America. Where did that investment pay off? And they're still living at home because with their student loan, they can't afford rent. Higher education in America means decades and decades of chains of debt that you're tied to forever. It's not a golden ticket by any means. It's actually more like a trap. And we're sold this as some myth to better our situation and to get out of a bad situation. If you compare that to a place like the UK, where I'm living now, it is definitely not inexpensive here in the UK. But while you are paying here in the UK, it's definitely attainable. It's so much more of an investment and it's not inflated. It's not promoted to that you go away and live, out of state when you go to school and study. It's really a way to bury yourself and start. And so many people in America start behind the eight ball and never can get ahead because of that student debt. Hard work automatically equates to success. That's what we're told. That's part of the American dream. The myth insists that if you just work hard enough, you'll get it. And if you don't get it, that's because you failed. That's because you didn't work hard enough. That's because you didn't assert yourself enough, or you need to do more. It's always put back on the individual when they don't achieve the goals that society has set for them, not even them setting them for themselves. Millions of Americans work multiple jobs, sometimes 60 hours a week. I know people who worked years without getting a day off. Literally no weekends, no holidays, nothing. And they still struggle. They're still working paycheck to paycheck. They still are like one medical emergency or financial emergency in general of complete collapse of their finances. They can't cover rent, or they're deciding how much rent they can pay so that they can keep the lights on and keep their kid in daycare while they go to work again. Hard work doesn't equate to success automatically, especially in an environment like the United States. The American dream is extremely unattainable for the average person that has a family, a life, a home, anything like that. But what it does guarantee is that you're going to be tired as hell and you are probably going to have an early grave. A big way for Americans to prove they've achieved their American dream and build wealth for the future generations back in the day was home ownership. So the idea was you go to school, you work a good job, so that when you get married, you can buy a home and pay off that home by the time you retire. And then your child or your future generations will have that home as a way to build wealth off of. And then those future generations would then be propelled even further up the ladder. Even though it's an ultimate milestone in America to own, the 2 bedrooms, or the 4 bedrooms and the picket fence and all that stuff, it's really unattainable for a lot of people. The skyrocketing prices matched with stagnant wages and the predatory mortgage lending in America is insane. Now, I know there's some of that here in the UK. Here in the UK, because space is at a premium, housing costs are much, much higher. So I know that there's a little bit of a dream of attaining the home in order to kind of secure wealth for future generations here as well. But it's also becoming very difficult for people in the UK to do that because of the same stagnant wages and skyrocketing prices and all of the uncomfortable political stuff that's happening in both countries. How can you tell us that the epitome and the ultimate milestone of achieving the American dream is home ownership and building wealth for your future generations when you can't even afford a condo? You can barely afford the rent on that condo. Doesn't make any sense. And finally, I did touch on this a little bit earlier when I was talking about not you not being successful with your education. Is if you don't attain the American dream or you're struggling with the American dream, you're to blame. You're the reason. It has nothing to do with the system being rigged. It has nothing to do with the overpriced education costs that don't need to be so inflated. It's the most dangerous part of the American myth, actually, because it takes the responsibility of the government to help provide for the well-being of their citizens, the basic needs of their citizens, to ensure those basic needs are met: housing, clothing, safety, food, health. And it puts it on the individual. If you're struggling, it's because you did something wrong, or you haven't worked hard enough, or you need a fifth job. And why are you so lazy that you only want to work one job and pay your bills with that job? It's ridiculous. It takes the responsibility of making sure that companies are paying their employees at a reasonable wage, or at least providing an economic version of healthcare for their employees, that the government doesn't have to subsidize the American citizens that are paying their salaries, that are paying into that system in any way, shape, or form. Is complete crap, in my opinion. And the worst part for me that I've discovered in realizing this big myth that I was sold my whole life is that it kept me and keeps others from questioning the bigger picture. Because the onus is always on you, you're always looking at yourself. You're always feeling like a failure. You're always wondering what you did wrong. Keeps you from looking at who's actually benefiting from all your hard work. And 99% of the time, in America anyway, it is not the average American that's doing the work. It's usually someone who could probably benefit from a couple days of good, hard, average American work. In my opinion, that whole American dream thing isn't a dream. It's just a nice story. It might have been something that was applicable and achievable at one point in American history, but it's not anymore. It is a very powerful propaganda story that people are told in order to keep them working, in order to keep them distracted, and in order to make sure that you're striving and consuming and you're never ever looking outside of yourself for assistance, for what the reality really is. I was lucky enough to find a version of the American dream, but I had to go to a new country in order to find it. And that is not something that I am necessarily excited or happy about. It's something that I find extremely disturbing, actually. how strange is it that there's entire nations out there that are better equipped with less money to take care of their citizens and are doing better job of providing opportunities for those citizens than the richest country in the history of the world, especially when that country is basically run and was built on a promise that was never actually real. Anyways, those are my thoughts about the American dream. I don't think it's exclusive to America. I think it's just a dream of wanting better for future generations and your children than you had. But I am curious what you guys think. And I am curious if you think it's a myth or you think it's real and what your experience is with it. I'd love to know. So let me know in the comments below. Make sure you stay safe out there, and I'll see you guys next time.